remember us entering the tunnel and I could just feel somebody staring at me. I see him lean forward and then look along the carriage. And I was just about to say to him, "What are you looking at?" And I just see him put his hand in the bag.
On July the 7th, got up, went to work.
I remember quite clearly, I was the most junior of all reporters at The Sun.
I would travel into London on the tube.
Getting on the tubes around that time, around 8 a.m, they were absolutely rammed. There was no breathing space. You were crammed in like sardines.
It was obviously nice weather too, it was the summer, everyone's feeling good, and it felt like London was the best city in the whole world to be in at that moment.
There was, at that time, a definite threat. This really went back to 2001 and the 9/11 attacks. John Stevens, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, had said it was not if, but when a terrorist attack occurred. But there was no doubt it was a real concern.
On the morning of July 7th, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I was a construction manager at the time, so my working day was overseeing the renovation of a mental health hospital in Wembley. It was quite a nice sunny day, quite warm, and there was a burst water main kind of 500 metres up the road. I'm sat on the bus thinking, do I just jump off now, run back, get my car and drive to the site? I decided to stay on the bus. And everything that kind of followed from then is these sliding door moments where if I make a different decision, everything goes in a different direction. As I'm coming down the steps onto the Circle line, there was a train there, but it was already full of people. The next train was only a couple of minutes away, so I jumped on the next Circle line train. When I was on the train, I'd realised that I'd missed my stop. I should have got off at Baker Street. So I remember the train pulling into Edgware Road. I remember us entering the tunnel and I could just feel somebody staring at me. And I just didn't think anything of it. I went back to messing around with my phone. And then at the corner of my eye, I see him lean forward and then look along the carriage, and he sat back and was staring at me again. So I looked round and was just about to say to him, like, "What are you looking at?" And I just see him put his hand in the bag and then just this brilliantly bright white flash. I had no idea what had happened. In my head, I thought there'd been either a train collision or electrical explosion. I could see my arms and hands were on fire. And then I very quickly looked around to see what was around me. And that's when I saw the first dead body. And I thought I was gonna die. Whatever I looked at and wherever I looked, the next thing I saw was worse than what I'd previously seen. It was like hell on earth in there, and I wanted out, and if dying was the only way out, I was fine with that. I just didn't want to die alone. I was terrified of dying on my own.
People were anxious to find out what had happened. Speaking to contacts, they're very much a feeling that this was going to be homegrown terrorists who were responsible.
The names came out quite quickly. Mohammed Sadiq Khan, he worked in a primary school with children who maybe struggled with some sort of aspects of learning. Tanweer, he worked in his mum and dad's fish and chip shop. They played football with their mates in the street. One of them was very keen on cricket.
They were just normal lads. I remember being really struck by that and thinking, how can you go from that to doing something like this, which is so shocking and horrific and coordinated and deliberate to hurt people.
They brought in another local lad, Hasib Hussain, up in West Yorkshire. Jermaine Lindsay came from down in the south.
People more senior to me started getting phone calls to go to Leeds and Beeston, where 3 of the 4 bombers were from. It's a working class area on the outskirts of Leeds. It's one of those places where people are generally incredibly friendly, mainly terraced houses. A lot of the community centred around places like the community centre and sports clubs. The thing that always hit home really was that they were upstanding members of the community.
You've got Mohammed Sadiq Khan, the leader of the 7/7 cell. His married father, people speak well of him, and yet there's another Mohammed Sadiq Khan who is this indiscriminate killer who wants to end as many lives and ruin as many lives as possible.
It was before dawn that they packed up their cars with the explosives.
Driven down the M1, got to Luton, got their rucksacks on their backs, left the car in the car park, boarded a Thameslink train. And at that time, 4 men with large rucksacks, we might think a little bit more carefully on it now, particularly if they're kind of like walking in unison.
King's Cross on a weekday morning, hugely busy station, massive transit point for commuters.
Getting on the tubes around that time, around 8 a.m, they were absolutely rammed. There was no breathing space. You were crammed in like sardines.
It's the key time for people, arriving at their offices for say 9 o'clock, 9:30.
They tried to create a burning cross. You've got Aldgate to the east, Edgware Road to the west, and then Russell Square to the south. And then at King's Cross, they've all gone on their way to spread death, destruction, to kill themselves and as many other people with them.
I was pinned down by one of the side panels of the train, and as I put my hands underneath the metalwork, I could feel into my left leg, so my left leg was blown clean off in the blast, and my right leg was severed from the knee down. And at that point, I just screamed for help. It wasn't that I thought I could be saved, it was that I needed somebody to know who I was. I needed somebody to be able to say to my family, I was there with him, he wasn't alone, and that was really, really important to me. I heard this really deep South African accent shout back. He said, "My name's Adrian, keep talking to me, I'll find you." Adrian, incredibly, incredibly brave man. He managed to lift the debris off me. He used his belt to tourniquet my right leg, and he basically pushed his hand into what was left of my left leg, found the artery and pinched it shut. What I later found out is Adrian's a fully trained combat medic, so Adrian knew exactly what to do. And we laid there like that for about 40 minutes before the first emergency services got to us.
They started to form a picture that they'd gone to various radical mosques, listened to various preachers, and in their sort of later teens, they'd started to take a different path in their lives.
Muhammad Sadiq Khan and Shahzad Tanweer have both been in Pakistan at training camps. The plans for this attack must have gone back to then. This may not have been directly Al-Qaeda, but it was definitely inspired by Al-Qaeda.
You have to remember that this was a time when the idea of kind of Al-Qaeda terror training camps and people going to them and training and coming back to it was all quite a new concept and something that was sort of really unfamiliar.
I think that is the sliding doors moment of their lives, really.
It's quite clear that MSK in particular had the training to put this stuff together properly. I still see this form of terrorism, this indiscriminate terrorism without warning as an attack on all of us.
It wasn't until almost an hour later that the last bomb exploded on the bus in Tavistock Square.
9:47, the final bomb on the bus. I can remember it very well, woken up that morning very early, got into the newsroom, and it was just bedlam really. Organised bedlam, but it was people shouting, running around, all sorts of stuff. I think that final blast, the picture started to come together at that stage.
A black taxi with its light on happened to pass me, so I just hailed it down and said, "Can you take me to Tavistock Square?"
I remember getting quite a breathless call from someone on the news desk saying, "Can you get to central London, to Tavistock Square?"
I was there quite early onto the scene and could see blood splatters at the side of the British Medical Journal building. There was obviously all the people who worked in those buildings and everyone milling around in the street. It was carnage down there.
I'm just going to make a short statement. It's reasonably clear that there have been a series of terrorist attacks.
We are particularly saddened by the loss of life.
We'll not yield to the terrorists. We will find them, we'll bring them to justice.
It became clear quite quickly that 4 bombs had gone off at 4 different locations. People were genuinely scared, and because the bombs had happened on London transport, I think people felt really vulnerable. There was a real sense of fear that, there were more bombs and more bombers. But my job really was to try and just speak to people who had witnessed what happened or witnessed the aftermath of what happened.
When I was there, you're in the moment and you're in that story. that instinct kind of takes over to, right, I need to find out what's happening, I need to speak to people. It's kind of, you just go into that reporter mode. And even though I was sort of a person myself in the incident, kind of caught up in this in London, that sort of takes a back seat.
It began to dawn that there were a huge number of casualties involved, that there had been 4 attacks, 3 at London Underground and 1 on a bus. The city was in a state of chaos.
They were murderers, and you can dress it up however you want, they were murderers. In the space of 30 seconds, I come face to face with what the worst in humanity has to offer in him. And then 30 seconds later, I come face to face with the very best of it in Adrian. And then Graham, the paramedic, and the fire brigade, and all the rest of them. And as long as we've got people like that, they won't win.
From that day, it was really frightening for people. It was really shocking, this idea that these, normal lads, British lads, could travel down to London and, commit such, callous and evil hostilities.
I suppose everyone became acutely aware of the threat that we were under as a country and the potential vulnerability. The thing that sticks in the mind is just how nervous people were using public transport. We had to recognise that there was a new threat that we'd never really been subjected to before.
What was kind of amazing was, I think there was a real sense of defiance and a sense of, we're not going to let the actions of these people change our lives and, make us afraid. We're not afraid. That's what's always so strange about these kinds of incidents, that they're born out of the most unimaginable evil, but by the same token, you see the most amazing compassion and bravery from the majority of people.
We had no warning. We had no defence mechanism. We couldn't fight back. And for me, there can never be forgiveness for that. You're not going to win. And I firmly believe that as long as we've got people like Adrian in the world, and my wife Jem, who's just a massive support to me and rebuilt a very, very broken man, these people will never win.